Should be starting here in just a second. If you'd like to ask questions or if you want to comment, please go over to the chat section and feel free to leave a comment or ask a question. Okay. All right, welcome everyone to another installment of Grid Down Survival Retreat Consulting. I'm Jonathan Hollerman. Today we got, for our live Q&A on July here, we've got a couple more questions from some Patreon members. And again, as always, feel free to comment or ask a question over in the chat box. So the first question I'm going to dig into here a little bit today is, you know, before I start getting into the questions, there's some stuff that's been happening lately, and I'm going to be putting out a video, I think in the next day or so, on, there was a DoD request for information, an RFI that was put out, or it's DOE, Department of Energy, requesting information on the threat of a grid down scenario. Michael Mabey's response to that RFI, it's like 60 pages. The first 28 are the real important ones, but it is a must-read document in my opinion. If anybody that you know doesn't understand the threat to the electric grid, if they don't understand why the grid hasn't been hardened, why the electric utilities fight so hard against hardening our electric grid, it is a impeccable document. It's to the point. It is completely footnoted. There's hyperlinks to all the supporting information. So he lays out the case against the electric utility industry and against the government on why the electric grid isn't hardened. So I highly recommend it. It is one of the most important documents I think you could share with your friends or family or anybody that you're trying to get engaged. So I made a short video about that, so be sure to check that out. The first question today is, what do you see as the tactical advantage of infrared or thermal versus the tactical advantage of night vision? If you had to pick between the two, which one would you get and why? And do you have a recommendation for a specific brand? And if money is an issue, is it worth buying a cheap model or just wait until you can afford and buy a better model? There's a lot of loaded questions in there. So night vision and thermal are not an either or in my opinion. I believe it is a both. I think both are very valuable and both have their uses. Thermal has come down a lot in price in just the last 5 years. So 5 years ago, my recommendation was to head towards the night vision because thermal was just, to get a good thermal optic was unreasonably expensive for most people. So first off, I wouldn't go cheap. And that's tough to say because I know a lot of people are working on a budget, but if you're going to be spending $500 on a little Leopold night tracker or a small digital night vision device, you're going to get what you pay for. And it's probably not going to last you real long, it's not going to have the clarity, and it's not going to have the distance to identify the threats that you need to. So the first thing I would do is, if you're going to look at a full night vision or thermal optic, one of the two, and we'll talk more about differences here in a minute. The first thing I would want to do is know where you live, right? So if you live out in South Dakota, I don't know how we're supposed to pronounce it. Thermal is winter chicken dinner. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. You have if you get a good 640 thermal optic handheld, or I prefer something that can also be mounted on a rifle, and you have open planes and you can see as far as the eye can see, the thermal is going to be your best bet because you're going to be able to locate targets at a much further distance than you will with a night vision optic, right? So if you have long distances to your retreat or to the area that you're holed up in, thermal is a no-brainer. If you are in a much more enclosed situation, let's say you're in the mountains of North Carolina and you've got, some setbacks 30 yards in each direction, which is which is too little, but I know there's a lot of locations where they don't have a lot of yard space or a lot of open ground around you. The night vision will, I would say if you had a good quality Gen 3 Plus night vision optic, you would get, you'll get a better sense of what you're looking at, right? So the thermal optic will pick up the heat signature and you can't hide from it. And it's valuable for locating the target, but depending on the night, depending on the quality of the thermal optic that you have, the distance of the target, are they standing behind some bushes, you may not be able to delineate whether that's an adult man or if that's a young teenage girl, right? So if you have a good IR light and a night vision optic, it'll help you to identify the target better once you have located the target. So thermal is really good for locating targets. Night vision is a lot better at identifying targets. So in short, if I were to have a recommendation, I would highly recommend the PVS 14, and you can get two PVS 14s that are kind of matched up. If you get them from the same location, you request to get get them matched up so they're pretty similar. The two of them are pretty similar, and then you can wear them as a set of goggles. So that if you've seen some of my pictures on Instagram, you can have a helmet set up and you can run both PVS 14s and run them like goggles. You don't have the greatest depth perception, but for close quarters combat and running goggles with a laser is good for close distances. Now, those same set of PVS 14s that set up as goggles, I can take them and I can put one on my rifle and I can put one on my number 2's rifle. And you can also use it as a handheld. So I like the versatility. Anytime you're looking at versatility on things, you're not going to get the best of every world. You're going to have some sacrifice in every category. So if you got a set of dedicated goggles, it's going to be better than a set of PVS 14 goggles. If you had a dedicated night vision scope on a rifle, it's going to be better than a PVS 14 setup behind your red dot. However, now you have a dedicated rifle with that optic, because every time you take it on and take it off, can you really trust whether it's going to be zero when you put that optic back on with the quick mounts? Now, they do have quick mounts today, the LaRue quick mount and some of the other ones I've used. It's pretty impressive how close to zero you can get, but I definitely wouldn't want to take a precision shot. So again, if you're talking close quarters combat, 25, 50 yards, then that's not a problem. I like having it set up where my optic, my red dot that's on my rifle, I never touch. So I put this behind that. It's the same rifle that I'm comfortable with, that I use in all my training. So that's the reason I prefer the PVS 14 over like a dedicated night vision scope. Now the thermal side of it, the prices have really come down a lot. I was just looking the other day, I think you can pick up if you can find them, you can pick up a FLIR, what am I thinking? A FLIR Scout 3 640 resolution for like $1,600. They've come down a ton. Just a few years ago, they're like $3,500. They've come down almost probably in half. So the benefits of thermal is with night vision, once you see the target and you focus in on the target, you can make out some particulars better. But if you're scanning with night vision at night, you can scan right past somebody. If somebody's standing perfectly still next to some bushes or laying down in some high weeds, you're never going to see them with a night vision. So that's the big drawback. Plus, night vision is affected with rain and snow, and if you have foggy conditions, they're going to be almost useless in that kind of scenario. They're in fog, they're going to be completely useless. With thermal, on the other hand, thermal picks up heat signature. It's not about the light reflecting off the object. So it will cut through light rain, light snow, light fog. And the benefits of the thermal is you'll be able to identify a target that's laying still, that's maybe out at your fence line, that's crawled up to your fence line and they're just kind of poking their head up above some high weeds, you're gonna have a much better job as you're scanning, picking that out, because it's gonna glow red. And then you can zoom in on it, you can get your night vision optic, you can zoom in with that and get a better feel for what you're looking for. So they really work in tandem, in my opinion. As far as price goes, to get a good, so on the thermal side, the FLIR Scout 3 that I was just talking about, the 640, that's a really good for a LPOP or from a watch position, because it's small, it's lightweight, it's maneuverable, you can hold it up, you can move it around really easily. If you can only afford one, I would trade up Trijicon, I think it's the Reaper, R-E-A-P-I-R. I can't remember if that's the clip-on one or the Sniper is, but anyways, Trigicon's got some good night vision, or I'm sorry, thermal optics these days, and they have one that'll clip behind your red dot on your AR. The only drawback that I found is they're kind of bulky and heavy compared to the smaller FLIR Scout as far as just carrying it around with you all the time. But it is a trade-off that I made, and I have, it's not the FLIR Reaper, I can't even remember which one I purchased now. But anyways, I got a clip-on that went behind the red dot of my rifle, and it also has the ability, you can actually put it in front of a 1-to-6 power scope as well. So just for functionality, it's heavier, and I don't know why I'm having a brain malfunction here right now. I'll have to look it up. Sorry that I wasn't prepared for that answer, but the one I purchased, I'll go ahead and post a link down below to the one I purchased, because it was a lot more universal for different applications. But okay, so that's my thoughts on night vision and thermal. If money is an issue, is it worth buying a cheap model or just wait until you can afford to buy a better model? It just depends on what kind of budget you're on. I mean, if you're in a real tight budget and you can't envision yourself ever dropping $3,000 or $4,000 on night vision or thermal optics, then yeah, pick up a $500. I think Leupold makes, I think it's called the game tracker, the Leupold game tracker. It's kind of a 160 pixel thermal optic, so it's not the greatest, but at close distances and at further distance, it'll pick up big objects, right? You're not going to pick out a rabbit at 200 yards, but you'll see a human at 200 yards. So yes, I would lean that way, or getting a cheaper night vision optic. But if you're looking at night visions, they come down a good bit as well. I would be hard pressed not to get anything Gen 3, anything lower than Gen 3. I really wouldn't. The amount of clarification between Gen 3, Gen 3 Plus, and the earlier Gen 2s, Gen 1s. You can pick up a Gen 1 night vision optic for dirt cheap, but again, you pay for what you get. But if that's all you can afford, that's all you can afford. So, but thermal, night vision. If you haven't bought food yet, you can't eat your thermal, you can't eat your night vision. So make sure you got your food squared away first. Next question. When considering a private off-grid bug-out location, I would want to keep it well hidden from those on the ground. What recommendations do you have for maintaining the privacy of your off-grid location? Camouflage, no driveway, built underground, heat with something other than wood. Also, is there a way to provide that same hidden protection from drones, aircraft, and satellites? So, I've answered a lot of these questions in Survival Theory 1, and I've covered a lot of these topics already online here. Drones, aircraft, and satellites, no, you're not hiding from them. The best bet is to make it look like something normal. So that's a big failure that a lot of preppers do, is they want to build Fort Alamo, they want the razor wire, they want the moat with the alligator, they want the big, long array of solar panels. That they build a survival retreat that looks like a survival retreat. So yeah, I would not do that, because drones, anybody flying over the woods where you live, just checking something out, not even looking at your stuff. If they see that kind of infrastructure, something weird like that, that's going to stick in their head. So building with shipping containers, big weird structures that aren't normal, that sticks in people's heads. So when a scenario happens, that image of that weird bunker thing that you're building is going to pop into their head, and they're coming. So anytime you're building or doing a fallback location, make sure that you are doing it so it fits in with the area in which you live. It fits in with the environment, the type of houses, the type of lodges, the type of cabins. Don't make something that stands out a ton, okay? Aircraft, same thing. So from the air, I just want it to look like a normal home or ranch or whatever. Satellites, you can't hide from the satellites. Put your tinfoil hat on, maybe that'll protect you, but the satellites are coming, they're getting better, and you can't hide from them. The fact of the matter is they're not looking for you either, but if they are looking for you, you're not hiding it from the satellite. Drones. So that's one of the new things, and I have a section and a chapter on Survival Theory 2 coming on thermal drones. Thermal drones have come down a lot. There's a company called Drone Nerds that have a thermal drone, and it's only like $4,500. So a lot of people plan to march and send out patrols to walk their perimeter, their survival retreat, or their survival group, and you're just asking for that person to get shot. It'd be much better to send a drone out 2 o'clock in the morning. You can pick up heat signatures in the woods at night. You can figure out which roofs of your neighbors are glowing and who's living where, who's gardening, who's doing what. So a drone, DJI Mavic type drone, not DJI Mavic themselves, because their software 100% requires GPS satellites to be functioning. So there's some other, that's a longer topic, but there are other companies that make drones and thermal drones where you can set it up based off triangulation and some other systems where it's not running off the GPS satellites. Because in an EMP situation, or possibly even a solar flare, those GPS drones could be, or the GPS satellites could be falling out of the sky. Heat with something other than wood. Yes, again, masonry, wood heaters, Russian stoves, Finnish stoves, whatever you want to call them. Absolutely. The other option of that is if you're on the East Coast here, or if you're PA, West Virginia like I am, there's a lot of coal mines in the area. You can get coal really cheap. Coal lasts forever. You can pile it up on the backside of your property. You don't even have to throw a tarp over it, and it's good for 1,000 years. So burning a coal stove as opposed to a wood stove produces a lot less smoke, and you can store up a lot more coal for cheap and just have it there ready to go. So if you can't, so having a coal stove, a coal heater would be my first option on a budget. If you've got the money, masonry wood heater or a Russian Finnish stove, but obviously you're gonna have to hire somebody to come out and hand build that from scratch. So they do get some kind of spendy. Build underground. I'm not opposed to building underground. My personal take is I don't want to live underground when the time comes. When I wake up in the morning, I want to see the sun come over the horizon. I don't want to be in a situation where I'm living in a bunker. So I definitely don't advocate for bunker living post-collapse, because that's going to get real old real fast. So if you're talking about like an earth home, which is kind of how I took that, like an earthen home where you have a saw roof, absolutely. They're expensive. They have to be done right or they're going to leak. But absolutely, if you want to go that route and have like an earth burned home or something like that, absolutely. But also, and on the same front what I mentioned earlier, if you do go that route and build an earthen home, passive solar facing south typically, make sure you don't do anything wonky with it and make it look like a bunker. Again, make it look like some hippie place more so than a bunker, okay? Recommendations for maintaining the privacy of off-grid. Look at camouflage, no driveway. Talk about this numerous times on the show. S-bend right off the driveway that your S-bend off the side road that your driveway comes off of, and make sure there's coniferous pine tree type foliage in between there, so somebody looking from the road can't look back there. I don't care what you do with your driveway, 100 yards or a couple hundred feet back in the woods, but off the main road. I want to see 2 dirt paths with grass growing in between. I don't want it improved. I'd like to see an old rusty gate there with some that looks like it's been there forever. Nothing fancy, no ironwork, no stone mailboxes unless you tear it down after the fact. But that entryway, I'd want to put signage up there after the fact for a gas pipeline or a cell phone access road. Try and make your driveway look like an access road instead of a driveway. Camouflage. It's tough to camouflage a house. So your best bet is having it done correctly in the first place, where you don't have to really camouflage it. But I understand what you're saying. There are. If your house is visible from the road, you're wrong in the first place. So it's tough to camouflage it, but you can camouflage the look of certain things, right? I would camouflage my solar panels so the FedEx guy and people that regularly come to visit don't see your solar infrastructure. All right, OG Skywatch, drones for the win. EMP alien weapon, solar stove, solar stove, Sun Oven. If you haven't looked at them, I actually know the guy that owns the company, Sun Oven, Forrest Garvin, great patriot. He runs PrepperNet as well. So the Sun Oven, All American Sun Oven, is a great product. I've used it. I've seen its use multiple times. The big drawback is if you're in a really cold environment, it still functions, just not quite as efficiently as it does in the summer. Mobile is better. Mobile is not better. If you've got 100 million people fleeing the major cities when the time comes, and everybody's mobile and everybody's desperate, and you're on the open road, it's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of time till you run into the wrong hombre, and you can have all the plans in the world. You can have the best equipment, all the thermal night vision, all the highest quality stuff, but you can't protect yourself when you don't see the threat. You can't see the threat all the time. So, my opinion, your best case scenario is to get out of the big cities early and fast. Get somewhere remote, and then try your best to avoid human interaction for the first year till the majority of the people die off. So, all right, last question here. If we're planning a bug application with non-related members, do you recommend a set of written rules or agreements that the community will abide by? It's a big request, I know, but our group is not large enough and we need to add members. Each member must come to the group with sufficient stockpile of food, skills, ammunition, and the like. There needs to be a delegation of responsibilities, etc. that's agreed upon. Is there a written framework one can start with to then step through the process of drafting such a set of agreements? Even a list of the issues that needs to be addressed would be helpful. I laid out a handful of some things to think about. The problem is every group, and I've work with a lot of groups, every group dynamic is different. The people at the leadership of the group have different ideas as to how that location is going to be run. I've got groups where one guy owns all the infrastructure, and he kind of comes at this with my rule is law, and I'm trying to tell him that's probably not going to work out real well for you because they outnumber you 30-1, right? So you can have all the best laid plans. Anytime you bring somebody into your dynamic, your group dynamic, it's always a risk. It's always a threat. I've played matchmaker with a lot of people around the country, various clients of mine of various levels, and this person needs this type of person, this person needs this type of person. Oh, you guys would be a good fit. I've had some groups that worked out really well, and I've had one or two that didn't work out so well. In the sense that, it didn't go bad, they just agreed to kind of part ways and they weren't a good fit. So, it's difficult. So if you're talking about a set of written rules or agreements that the community will abide by, absolutely. Yeah, I would say have it written down. But you also have to realize that when the time comes and people are desperate and not thinking clearly, that written set of rules, when there's no 911 to call or no police to come and bail you out, those set of written rules on a piece of paper. It's just that, a piece of paper. So I think you should have it. And I think immediately after the collapse and everybody gets to retreat, don't wait till the first problem arises. Get that infrastructure, as that organization set up and functioning immediately, depending on how large your group is, as far as having voting members, who gets a say in what, delegation of authority to different jobs and to different areas of people's expertise. There's no reason why the guy that's an expert in farming and gardening should be making decisions on what the doctor's doing with the medical room, right? Vis-a-vis. So trust the people that have the expertise in the areas and have them in charge of that area, but there also needs to be a way to override that person if everyone else agrees, right? So that person, while they may be the expert in that area, the rest of the group may have a better feel for the environment outside something that's happening. That doctor or that farmer may not understand the threat that the other humans around are presenting to the group. So yeah, have a set of written rules and agreements that the community should live by. As far as each member must come to the group with sufficient stockpile of food, skills, ammunition. Yes and no. Anybody that I need in my group, if I have, I want them to bring their own stuff and have some skin in the game, but if I need an emergency room doctor, I'm going to put the food up for them because I want them. I want to be part of my team when the time comes, right? I'm not going to ask him really for anything. I'm also probably not going to tell him where the retreat is. I'm just going to have an agreement with him that when the time comes, the bus is going to pull up to the front of his house. He's going to have 10 minutes to get his suitcase, his wife and kids, get them in the vehicle and, move on down the road. So you need to think through all these things. OPSEC is so important. Don't talk about Fight Club. Don't discuss your plans. I know it's a cool secret and it's hard for people to keep their mouths shut in a lot of cases, but the more people that you bring into your group, especially outside people that you don't know as well, you don't know who they're telling, who they're talking to. But yeah. So anyhow, I think that's going to wrap it up for now. The Postman, yeah. Somebody just made a comment about the Postman. That's a cult classic. That's one I haven't seen in a while. I gotta watch that again. But I think it's obviously a Kevin Costner fiction movie, post-apocalyptic movie. I think the one really telling aspect to take away from that movie is the warlord concept. I think most Americans just the idea of having warlords in the United States. When I say warlords, I mean the strongest person forms a group. That group fights that group. That block fights that block. This group, basically the one that comes out the winner, all the other people fold into that. And so you're going to end up having people kind of like the Postman that run their own private armies, right? And that with no military, no police, no way to stop that. It's going to be just the nature of the beast. It's human nature to want to be into a group, a cohesive group, and not be be alone. I know a lot of people want to just run for the hills and live off the land, and I know that's a very popular concept in movie culture. It's not going to go the way you think it's going to go. Most of the time, people are going to form groups, and the groups are going to fight each other for very limited, next to no resources. And typically it's going to be the biggest, strongest, meanest guy that walks away from it. And I think it was, trying to remember who, I think it was Baker from the EMP Commission said that, and if an EMP were to happen, to be like a continental time machine to go back like 150 years, and he said 90% of the people are going to die, and I don't want to be anywhere near the other 10%. So my huge recommendation is to the least human interaction you can have the first year, the better your chances of surviving long term. That first year is going to be complete chaos. After the first winter, after the mass die off, take a look around, see which one of your neighbors are still kicking, which one of them are still surviving. At that point, you can start building relationships with the survivors on the back end. Again, you got to be careful. You never know who you're dealing with or how desperate they are, or how much they're sizing you up as you're sizing them up. So anyhow, thanks for joining. today's Q&A, and as always, prepare for the worst, hope for the best, and let God do the rest. Take care, guys. Bye.